Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Hey Murderitas, I'm Danica.
And I'm Shannon.
We are the mother-daughter hosts of Murder and Mimosas,
A true crime podcast that strives to focus on lesser-known cases.
We personally think these episodes go down a little bit better with a mimosa.
You sip, we share.
So grab yours and get ready, because every Saturday at brunch time is a new episode.
You can listen to us on any podcast platform.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to a post-holiday Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan.
Hey, you.
You recovering from the holiday season yet?
Yeah, I am. I'm in recovery. I'm in recovery from the holidays.
You're extra jolly.
You mentioned today, like, we barely ate anything at dinner, but we were stuffed. Like, we just had a little bit.
I couldn't even eat dinner.
And you were like...
And I didn't eat lunch either. Like, I just had a few nibbles. I just couldn't do it.
I said we are full of holidays, right? I mean, we've just been...
Brimming.
We've not slowed down since Thanksgiving.
Busting at the seams.
I think everything's had cream, cheese, you know, things of that nature.
I told you tomorrow we're having salad. We're going to have some roughage in our life.
Yeah.
I need something green. I ask you, when was the last time we ate something green?
I couldn't remember. And when we tried
to... We did have green beans yesterday
yeah.
for the Christmas meal, but
even those had bacon in them.
I know. Don't tell people. Don't tell them how unhealthy we've been.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm getting prepared for my New Year's resolution.
I'm just packing on my hibernation pounds.
I'm getting prepared to, make some bold assumptions about my forthcoming year.
You've made resolutions?
Yeah.
Oh, will you tell us? Will you share?
Well, it's just going to be typical stuff. I'm going to, eat better, just worry more about my health. I might actually go through with making some doctor's appointments.
No.
Yeah, like I think I need to get checked up.
Have you been to the doctor since we've been married?
I don't, what? Yeah.
I don't think maybe one time.
Like when I'm like, oh, I got to go to the doctor.
I think you went to the doctor once.
Yeah.
Our entire marriage.
It's a lot.
Dylan.
Is that not amazing? Isn't that incredible?
No, it's kind of silly.
Why do you think it's silly? You think I should be doing like preventative care?
Probably.
Look,
you're at an age where you need to have things probed and checked out. They need to poke and prod and just make sure your goods are okay.
Hey, I've been asking to be prodded since I was 40, and they keep putting me off. I don't think I'm good enough.
They don't want to prod you?
I don't think they want to go up, come up from the southern regions and give me a proper look around.
You need a Dr. Diddy in your life.
Yeah, Diddy be like, come on back here, son.
He'll creep up from behind.
He's going to ask me what my interests are.
No, he's not. No, he's not. I'll never stop with the Diddy jokes, just so you know.
Well, look, with a name like Diddy, Diddler, and what he ended up being, a big old piece of shit, a shitbird for sure. A rap mogul shitbird. And I always thought I was just like, dude, he's such a coattail rider. Like he always, and you can say it's smart business, but it seemed like he was just riding other people's talents.
Just like globbing on.
Yeah, he's a hanger-oner.
He's a globber-oner.
Yeah, and he certainly did it with Biggie. And, I wonder what Biggie would think about all this.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's just sitting on his money green leather sofa putting 5 carrots in his baby girl's ear. That's all I got.
No, he's not.
That he would be.
Well, he would be. You know what? Maybe he
he
was,
is in heaven. What do you know?
Maybe he was a diddler too. I mean, we
Maybe
don't
when I'm
know.
in heaven, I'll have a money green leather sofa.
You know what? Back in the day, that sounded like just the epitome of making it. A money green leather sofa, real leather sofa. Remember back when people had like a real leather sofa? To us regular folk, that just was like, whoa. That's like a $1,500 couch. Back then, that was very expensive, you know. Very plush, well appointed.
I worked as a nanny. I've talked about this before. And they had a lot of money. They had like a leather living room suit. It
Yeah.
was the leather.
Would you
The
just
real leather?
sit on it and stroke it?
It was in like the formal room. Nobody really went in there.
They had that extra living room.
It was like the fancy front living room
Yeah.
that nobody used. Sometimes I would go in there and waller on the sofa.
You were getting like cracker crumbs up in the sofa.
No
Having
one was
snacks.
home. I would just go in there and be like, this is what it's like to have a leather sofa.
You know, that's a very, gosh, I don't know if I would call it classist, but when you have these whole extra rooms, I mean, I've done the poor version of that.
Just the fancy room,
Yeah, I had rooms I never go in.
the sitting room.
Yeah.
It's true.
But a whole nother living room, and it was always nice furniture in like the, the fancy living room.
I had rooms I didn't go into, but it was mainly just because I was poor and couldn't heat those rooms. So I kept them closed off and just like lived in the one room I could afford to heat.
Hey, I've hung blankets up on the hallway, be like, y'all stay up front of the house. The back's cold.
Hashtag poor single mom. Okay, Dylan, let's get into our episode. Are you ready?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
Because I haven't thanked today's sponsors.
Oh,
Yes, I would like to thank Carol and Straw Baby
yeah.
for sponsoring today's show. They were so very generous. They went on over to the Patreons, patreon.com, Mountain Murders. Say it, Heather.
Dylan.
Wait, I can do
We're
it.
closing in on our 6-year podcast versary. Mountain Murders turns 6 on December 28th.
That's right.
You've been doing this podcast for 6 years, and you're telling me you still don't know the Patreon website.
I can say it. Watch.
Dylan.
Patreon.com/Mountain
No,
Murders Podcast.
that is not.
Wait.
No.
Patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. That's it, right?
Or you could just say patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. You don't have to say / or /. People know.
Okay, well,
People who internet know, Dylan.
and this is why we are thriving and growing as a show. It's the professionalism.
It's really top notch.
But I really do want to thank them and all the other patrons and all our listeners. But as a patron, I'm just saying, it's just a couple bucks.
Man, we've had so many wonderful folks subscribe to Patreon, and they have become friends.
It's true.
Like, they're truly friends of the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
folks that we consider friends in our daily life now.
It's like the only friends we got.
And I want to give a big shout out to some of our listener friends who were so kind and gave us wonderful Christmas gifts.
Go on, talk about it.
So Renee, thanks. Man, she hooked us up. Girl, you did the damn thing. And then we had Brian and Santa. They even got Rufus a gift.
I know.
People are so sweet. They really are. So thanks so much. You guys really make our days
Yeah.
brighter.
And don't forget Blake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I bet he's trying to eat our candy.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay, Dylan, now that we have the business behind us, we can party in the front. We're like the mullet of podcasts.
Okay. We are, a little bit behind because
We're
of
reverse
holidays.
mullet. We got the business in the back, the party ahead.
We're a little bit behind, so we can't tarry any longer. Let's get into it.
Oh, you use the word tarry.
Yeah, isn't that right?
Yeah, I know. It's a great word.
I know.
There's a lot of words that are just not common, part of the common tongue today.
Yeah.
We should bring back, like tarry. It's a good one. Now, are you ready? You having your thinking cap? You focused?
No,
Focused?
not
Okay.
at all.
I know. It's a hard, sad, and pathetic truth, but prison is designed for just some people, Dylan. Like, it almost seems from the moment they're born, they're destined to end up behind bars.
Okay.
Will is the governing power in human nature. It is the power of decision or of choice. Philosophical debates about right and wrong and free will have been central to moral philosophy and metaphysics for centuries. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre argue that freedom is fundamental to human existence, and humans have the ability to choose their actions independently of external or internal forces. Yet others, including modern neuroscientists, argue in favor of determinism, that all events are determined by prior causes. I mean, this could include biological, psychological, or even environmental factors. It is my opinion that free will and determinism can coexist, more along the lines of David Hume, who argued that free will is their ability to act according to one's motivations, even if those motivations are determined. So it sparks quite a debate, and especially in today's case.
Yeah, you know what I think is prison is just like everything else. You know, people react differently to it. And I think some people go to prison and they're like, oh my God, this is way not cool. I hate it.
This is horrible. I don't ever want to be here ever again.
I never want to come back. And I think some people go there, and I'm not saying they prefer prison over freedom, but they don't mind it as much, or they almost thrive in a way. Like they find a way to operate, or they're kind of built for it with their personality or their attitude. I don't know. Some people don't seem to mind being in prison.
If determinism is true, can people be held morally responsible for their actions? If free will exists, how do we explain the influence of genetics, upbringing, and environment? And I won't even mention natural law versus social contracts because, well, this isn't a philosophy podcast. Although that would be fun to talk about. So let's get into it. James Neal Tucker was born January 12th of 1957 in Utah. He was the youngest of 3 children. His mother, Dorothy, was 22 at the time of his birth. His parents divorced, and Dorothy remarried Gerald Tucker, who had 4 children of his own. Gerald was a high-ranking elder in the Mormon Church. Gerald has been described as an authoritative religious man who ruled the 8 children with an iron fist. He doled out punishments in the forms of spankings, often with belts and paddles.
Oh my gosh.
Now, Dylan, did you get spankings as a child?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could call it that.
Whoopings? Was it whoopings?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of it, but I knew that much like Olivia Newton-John, if I kept on at a certain point, my mom was going to get physical.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced it as well. It was rare, and it seemed to be kind of reserved for those big no-nos.
Right.
And it left a mark in many ways.
Metaphorically and figuratively.
Yes. So I definitely did not recreate the experience again.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that's a similar big, really messed up. Or like I've said before, a lot of times when your parent reacts like that, they're scared just as much as they are angry. Like if you didn't listen and wandered off and, you know, they thought maybe you were kidnapped or lost or hurt or whatever. And but it certainly corrected my behavior.
Was it with a belt?
Yeah.
Or a hand or a paddle?
Yeah.
A hairbrush?
Or a
wooden
lamp.
Spoon?
Or a shoe. Yeah.
Just curious.
Or, yeah, I mean, how many ounces were those damn wooden spoon sets back in the day?
One time my mean old mama chased me around with a hairbrush until I locked myself in the bathroom.
Did she get you with it?
No.
She was gonna, though,
She
right?
was gonna. Yeah.
I've been swarped. I've been switched.
I've been switched. Now, my mama, she kept hickories
Yeah.
on top of the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And she would make you go get a hickory.
Damn.
Go get your own hickory. And then she would tear your little ass up.
It was literally a hickory switch.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And it burned and it stung.
The limber
And
ones.
she would just go to town on your little ass.
Gosh.
Yeah. You'd be dancing.
Yeah.
You'd be going in like a circle.
Well, yeah,
dancing.
they have the one arm. They have a hold of the one arm, and you're trying to run away, but then centrifugal force takes over and you're literally running them in a circle.
Yeah. Is this child abuse? Ha ha ha. But in all seriousness, I mean, maybe it was extreme, but I feel like I sure learned a thing or two. It was called the fear of the switch.
Well, it's called actions and consequences.
Well, there's that. All right, Dylan. So we got this. Oh, by the way, I was going to ask, was it a hand, a shoe? Did we talk about that already?
Yeah. Well, yeah, mostly a belt. I get a proper spanking. You know, I carry on sometimes, and there may have been an object or two involved over the years, but I mean, we all kind of snap here and there, right?
Do we?
Yeah.
I'm going to spank you later.
With which one? Hand, belt, object?
Wait and see.
Oh, gosh.
Just because you looked at me the wrong way. I don't like the way you looking at me right now.
You gonna get that
You
riding?
eyeballing me, boy.
Get that riding crop?
So Mormonism was a religious movement started in the 1820s and 1830s by a man named Joseph Smith in Western New York. I think most people know about Mormonism. I thought I'd give you a little brief history here. In the 19th century, a textbook of, Book of Mormon chronicles early indigenous peoples of America and their dealings with God. Mormonism includes mainstream Christian beliefs with modifications and additions made by Smith's revelations. Mormonism includes doctrines on eternal marriage, sexual purity, polygamy or plural marriage, fasting, and Sabbath observance. And I didn't know this, but we saw that movie Heretic with Hugh Grant recently, and they talked about magic underwear.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Well, I've heard of the first time I heard that turn of phrase, and I still don't know exactly what. I guess it has something to do with the undergarments they wear at a certain time, certain way. I'm not sure.
I got kind of excited because I thought, ooh, are they magic? Do they have they leave like a little trail of glitter behind you or something?
Yeah, that's why I was like, wow,
Fabulous.
do they have fairy dust? Do they glitter? But when Mitt Romney ran for president was the first time I heard the magic underwear phrase.
Did he say something about magic underwear?
I guess he was Mormon, right?
I don't know.
I think maybe.
I just remember he had binders full of women.
Well, there you go.
And didn't he leave his dog in a carrier outside the vehicle or something on a vacation, driving down the highway?
That's a movie.
No,
No, he really did.
No, it was some really fucked up thing.
He stored it on the roof or some shit.
Yeah, there's reasons why he's not a former president. It has been reported that at 18 months old, James was found abandoned in a car with a broken leg. His parents fled the state to avoid prosecution. I couldn't find further details about this incident, but according to James, there was a great deal of physical abuse in the household. As a youth, James did not get along with his stepfather, Gerald. The pair often went toe-to-toe, and James was physically beaten by his stepfather. James began getting into trouble for petty crimes and running away from home as a child. At the age of 13, James was arrested for the rape of an 8-year-old girl and spent time in a juvenile facility and a psychiatric hospital. While at the psychiatric hospital, James will later allege he was sexually abused by another inmate. Now, during this time, he was interviewed by psychologists who determined James had been abused, yet no formal charges were ever filed. James admitted that he and Gerald Tucker didn't get along and that he kept running away to avoid being at home. James also admitted that many of the crimes he committed were to avoid being sent back to his family.
So he'd rather go to juvenile hall than go home?
Yes.
Wow.
So he would commit almost more outrageous crimes each time, escalating.
Yeah.
So he would not be sent back.
Well, I think raping an 8-year-old's pretty...
And would be, spending an extended time in the jail for these crimes.
Yeah, and that's a terrible train of thought for a young person to even have to ponder. But, I mean, I think you have to be a certain kind of person to do something horrible like rape an 8-year-old. I mean, even saying that sentence is hard.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to break out windows and, property crimes, which is, I think, pretty serious personally. Vandalizing or violating other people's property, I think, is a pretty big deal.
Spray painting satin rules on a bridge.
Some people act like it's kids being kids, but I think it's a very significant violation when you mess with someone's home or property.
Well, I agree, because it's this lack of like respect and empathy you have for other people.
Right. And it's also can make that person feel violated and not safe.
James told psychologists he'd engaged in a homosexual type of relationship or behaviors with his stepbrother and brothers, and that he had watched them engage in sex as well.
Wow.
At the time, James felt guilt about what he had done, and this will be important later on. So, as much as you might not want to think about that, hold that thought, Dylan.
No.
Virgil Wayne, James's older brother, taught him how to break into houses. Virgil Wayne will later testify that they often spoke of how easy it would be to rape and sexually assault the women who lived in those houses. Now, as a young person, child, prepubescent teenager, into being a tween, young, and then into a young teenager, that's a fucked up thing to think.
Oh, I mean, that's...
that to me is very sick.
That's a terrible thought for anyone of any age to have, but certainly a young people. I've never even heard young people talk like that.
No.
And I would instantly be like, oh my God.
Virgil Wayne would also say that both were sexually abused by their stepbrother, Randy Tucker, who forced them to engage in masturbation and oral sex. Nori Chettle, James's sister, agreed there was some physical abuse and maybe sexual abuse in their childhoods while they lived in Utah. Then in 1974, James was incarcerated for the rape of an elderly woman who was nearly blind. He was given a 1 to 15 year sentence in Utah's prison system.
I can't. 1 to 15 years?
Yes.
For raping a elderly blind woman.
Yes.
Okay, just move on. Our listeners know what I think about that. It's just, it blows my mind.
After his release in 1978, James was sent back to prison for theft. This time he escaped. James spent most of his life behind bars except for the times he escaped. So we'll get into this. While incarcerated in the Utah prison system, James escaped a total of 3 times.
Okay.
In 1981, he was discovered missing after a head count, but was immediately recaptured as he attempted to break into a home. During the 1980s, James escaped from prison and was a fugitive for 5 years. Yeah. During this time, he'd befriended, while he was in prison, he'd befriended an inmate from South Carolina. So while he's on the run, he decides, and this is in 1984, while he's absconding from justice on the run, he shows up in South Carolina because that's where his buddy lived.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I like how he breaks out and then goes straight and commits a crime. That's really...
I'm going to go commit the crime that got me put here in the first place.
That's what you call laying low.
James and his friend found job postings about farm managers in Calhoun County, South Carolina. These jobs were at Webb Carroll's Training Center, a horse farm near St. Matthews. Shortly after, James was arrested for breaking and entering and for larceny in Spartanburg. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. So just can't stay out of trouble. In 1988, James was released from the South Carolina prison, but sent to Utah to finish out the remainder of his sentence since he had escaped back in 1984. He would be released in 1991 from Utah's prison system. It should be noted that James incurred 13 infractions from 1974 until 1991 while serving time. But this is strange, Dylan. While behind bars, he was able to get a Utah driver's license and a pilot's license while in prison. Don't even ask me how this is possible.
Wait.
Why would you be like, hey, here's an inmate. Let's teach you how to fly a plane.
Here's an inmate that likes to escape. You know, it's kind of boring that all he can do is like steal vehicles and stuff. Let's go ahead and teach him how to fly planes.
Yes.
So we can have a plane jacking.
I mean, don't you have to have like flight instruction hours?
Well,
how does this work?
here's the thing. Why is that even an option? In prison. I mean, I understand vocation, teaching people vocations, giving them new skills to, maybe earn money in a, legitimate way. But I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
Yeah, like on Orange is the New Black, she learned how to fix lamps.
Yeah.
Electrical work.
Well, yeah.
But not fly a plane. It's so weird to me.
It's
so
very weird.
Bizarre. On October 17th of 1978, James had been caught with 2 shanks, a piece of plexiglass, which he had on his person. Not sure was that a shield?
I don't know. Maybe, they have
like he was trying, he had these shanks. He also had a file.
Well,
So he had on some plexiglass, I guess. What was that, like a shield? That was his protective gear?
It could be. They have versions of like armor, if you will. When you're planning on getting in a fight, you would put that over a vulnerable part of your body.
Well, these are some of the infractions. I just thought I would touch on these so that you can see that even when he's behind bars, he's still engaging in delinquent shit.
Yeah, he's
not rehabilitated.
He doesn't follow the rules.
improving.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Finger in the air to authority of any kind.
In December of 1982, he was busted for having drugs in his cell. And in 1991, he was caught with, quote, contraband, which I guess could mean a number of things. It seemed that even while in trouble, James couldn't help himself out of trouble. Like, he just wanted to stay in trouble. He had this serious inability to conform to rules or follow laws.
Maybe he was just caught with a country band. Maybe that's a misprint. Like it's my boy Charlie Daniels and the Fiddlers.
Boot scooting down at Folsom.
Yeah.
Something like that. While living in South Carolina, James had met a woman named Marcia, and upon his release from prison, James returned to South Carolina in March of 1992, where he married his sweetheart.
I mean, he's a big catch. I understand why she scooped him up while he was available, while he was free.
Get him while he's hot. Marcia and James were expecting a child, and according to James, he was feeling financial pressures. He felt the more he worked and brought in money, the further in debt they got.
Yeah.
Is that what happens, Dylan?
That's called life, bud.
On June 25th of 1992, 58-year-old Rosalie, she went by Dolly, Oakley, was in her front yard at 1570 Hialeah Parkway in Sumter, South Carolina. It was not uncommon for Dolly to be outdoors working. She was usually tending to her flowers. She had beautiful roses that she took care of, or hanging laundry. On this particular day, it had been said that Dolly was washing windows.
I gotta say, when someone has a beautiful rose garden that they tend, because you have to work roses to really get the full effect.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when someone
my mom had roses and they were beautiful, but
Yeah.
it was like very time consuming.
Oh yeah, to have them blooming to their full effect.
Yes.
and looking as good as they can. And it's kind of like when people go to the when someone has nicely planned out tulips.
Oh yeah.
Or something,
Tulips are gorgeous.
some beautiful bulb
You
flower.
like a good bulb?
Yeah, I mean, just it always blew me away the fact you would plant something like in the fall, and it doesn't pay off for months and months, and then it comes up and it's so beautiful.
Teaches you patience, grasshopper.
And it's not something you can do overnight, But I've always admired a beautiful rose garden.
Yeah.
And I think rose bushes are really beautiful.
James Tucker pulled into the driveway and he had a gun on him. He points it at Dolly. He forces the woman inside her home, wrangling her into the bedroom. Dolly's husband, James, had just left to run errands.
That's terrible. They're just having a normal day. She's doing what she loves, working out in the yard, working her roses. Her husband's going around piddling. He's probably just
washing windows.
Yeah, just going to run some errands and such. And then have some horrible thing like this happen.
Let's talk a little bit about Dolly. She was the youngest of 9 children. These big families. It's a lot of playmates when you're young.
I couldn't imagine.
Growing up, she was favored and protected by her siblings because she was the baby. James and Dolly were country people. James is her husband. They were just kind of country people who met when they were 17. They dated for 2 years before marrying. The couple, who had no children, traveled extensively to places like Yellowstone National Park and caverns in Kentucky. The pair were considered inseparable. They even worked together. First at Darlington Electronics, then later they owned their own construction firm. They were the only two employees, and Dolly labored alongside her husband James, raising fabricated metal buildings. In 1988, Dolly developed some health issues, so the couple moved to Sumter, South Carolina, into a home that they built themselves.
Wow.
James described Dolly as the, quote, typical American housewife, and said they never went to bed mad in 35 years of marriage because they always worked it out.
Now, could you spend every waking moment with me?
I mean, I have before.
Like, work with me and everything? And I'm always there talking to you?
We can do it. We have before.
We spent a lot of time
We
together.
get along.
It never
for the
gets
most
old.
part.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to keep you in line.
Well, you know what? I need someone.
But you need it.
Yeah, I do.
It's what's best for you.
I do need someone to keep me in line.
You need supervision.
I need supervision. Because when I'm unsupervised, I mean, it's nothing dangerous is going to happen, but just basically nothing's going to happen.
I know. It's true.
Yeah.
Earlier we were discussing how if there was like an Olympic, like what Olympic sport you could participate in.
Yeah.
And we said yours could be just like couching.
You said lounging.
Just lounging and relaxing.
I believe that I am at the height, because that's what the Olympics is all about. The best of the best worldwide. And I would be happy to represent America, my country, America, in the lounging Olympics. And some of the commentating we were doing was pretty good.
It's true.
Yeah.
The way you fondle the remote control.
I'd be like, yes. Oh, what is this?
The way you can doze while you're sitting straight up.
Oh my God, people. We're seeing the absolute crowning achievement. He's asleep, sitting straight up. No one knows.
While a heavy metal band is playing all around him.
But if you ask him if he's asleep, he will instantly say, no, I'm not asleep.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not sleeping. Now, living in Sumter, the couple was known for their elaborate Christmas decorations. Dolly and James enjoyed fishing, including fly fishing. Dolly loved going to the fairs in Sumter and Columbia with her sister, where they would ride amusement rides. They were, quote, just like children, according to their husbands. So I thought that was sweet.
It is sweet.
During this time, as James attempted to, and we're talking about James Tucker, not her husband James. So during this time, James Tucker is attempting to tie her up. A man named Joe Black rang the doorbell looking for James Oakley, Dolly's husband. Joe Black was accompanied by a man named James Howard, who was driving the car. Now, Tucker allowed Dolly to speak to the men and explain that her husband was not at home. Before the men drove away, Dolly broke free from James Tucker and grabbed a hold of James Howard, telling the men, please don't leave me, he's going to kill me.
Oh my gosh.
In a moment of panic, Howard fled the scene along with Joe Black. James Tucker dragged Dolly back inside the house where he took $14 from her purse, then proceeded to shoot her twice.
Jesus.
Tucker will later say he shot Dolly the first time when she tried to wrestle the gun away from him and followed up with the second shot to, quote, put her out of her misery.
Yeah, man. Anytime someone uses that, well, they tried to grab the gun and then it went off. That's such bullshit. Because that couldn't have happened if that's even what happened. It couldn't have happened if you hadn't tried to.
They both reached for the gun, they reached for the gun. Gotta throw a little Chicago in there.
That could not have happened if you were not trying to rob them and accost them.
James used a 1977 Cadillac as a getaway car, which he would later abandon at his 2390 Underwood Road residence, which was only about 10 miles from the Oakley house. The Cadillac belonged to a friend who had been staying with Tucker. Witnesses will later say they also saw James Tucker on June 25th driving a black Camaro. That vehicle was found abandoned near Marshall Cemetery Road by law enforcement. Search dogs were brought in and officers combed the woods surrounding the area until about 4 a.m., but found no sign of James Tucker. While on the run from police, Tucker broke into the Christian Fellowship Church sometime between June 26th and 27th of 1992. Two young women in their 20s entered the church's kitchen in order to get ready for a service and spotted a man who fit Tucker's description. The women were frightened. They said James Tucker had opened cans of food and that he had taken his shirt and shoes off to dry them out. When he left, Tucker was wearing only a pair of jeans. He left behind a blue plaid shirt and a pair of blue canvas shoes. It appeared Tucker had broken out a window at the church to get inside. Now, at the time, the women did not see a gun on James Tucker, but he was still considered armed and dangerous by law enforcement. He also broke into a mobile home that was next to the church, owned by a man named Kenneth Parker. Between 50 and 75 lawmen, along with bloodhounds, searched a 10-square-mile radius around the church looking for James. On Monday, June 29th, Tucker steals some clothes, then walks to a store on US 15, where he hides in a delivery truck headed north out of town. At US 521 and Mason Road, Tucker exits the truck and walks to a shopping center on US 76. Hiding in the bed of a pickup truck, he rides through Richland County to US 601. He then hides in the spare tire rack of a tractor-trailer truck and catches a ride to St. Matthews. And he's familiar with St. Matthews because he worked at that horse training center as a farm manager. Now, investigators learned that James Tucker had been employed for the previous 6 months as a welder at H&R Metal Productions and that he was expecting a child with his wife. So they're just kind of baffled, like, why is he doing this? Like, he's got a job, he's married, he's about to have a baby.
He likes doing this stuff. I mean, that seems like the only answer to me.
On July 1st, Tucker is in Calhoun County, a familiar area because he worked at that horse farm. He had stolen a station wagon from a funeral home, but had gotten it stuck in the mud in a wooded area near the horse farm. Living in a cottage nearby is 21-year-old Shannon Mellon. Mellon, who's from Ohio, worked at the Webb Carroll Training Center and had dreams of becoming a jockey. In the yard, Tucker spotted a Chevy Blazer and a Ford Mustang. He could overhear a man and woman speaking inside the house, and so he just kind of lays in wait. And it didn't take long for the man to depart, and Tucker sees him driving away in the Chevy Blazer. Tucker cut through the phone line to the house and entered the house through a window that was open.
Such a coward.
Shannon Mellon was asleep by this time. Tucker subdued Mellon with masking tape, then shot her once in the back of the head while she was lying in bed. He stole $20 from her purse. The first shot did not kill Mellon, and when she came to, she told him, quote, "I can't see." That's when he shoots her a second time, but she's still breathing. Tucker then shot Shannon Mellon a third time in the temple area.
Jeez.
That's when he goes in the kitchen and gets a glass of milk to drink.
Oh, yeah.
Because nothing satisfies a thirst like milk after you've just shot someone.
Yeah, and in his mind, to be like, well, I put them out of their misery. The misery I caused them.
All of this for $34.
Jeez. That's what I'm saying. It's not even about money. He's not making out like a bandit. He's not getting rich off of, he's not even getting pocket change off of these people. He likes this position of power, just doing what he wants. He doesn't care.
Tucker wraps Mellon's body in a sheet from the bed and carries her about 100 yards into the woods behind the cottage. He used the blankets on the bed to hide the bloodstains. So he just sort of makes the bed up, gets rid of her body. Tucker then stole Mellon's blue 1989 Mustang and drove it to Spartanburg, where he would park it at a grocery store on July 2nd, 1992, and it will be found there. With the holiday weekend, it would take several days for anyone to notice that Shannon Mellon was missing. With authorities working nonstop to track James Tucker, a lead comes in from Utah. Authorities in Utah offer up an address of a former inmate who had been friends with James Tucker. And as it turns out, Tucker had been staying undetected in the Arkwright community, which is located in Spartanburg, for about a week after the car was abandoned.
Really? So he's just kicking it. Just going around.
Chilling with his prison friend.
Yeah.
Just hanging out. Doing what he do.
Which is nothing.
Nothing useful. Details are murky, but somehow James Tucker was able to hitch a ride to Maggie Valley, North Carolina with an elderly couple who had no idea he was a wanted man. Now, of all places, Dylan, Maggie Valley.
Well, that is somewhere that people are going to notice you, I would think. Especially if you're up to no good. Right?
Yeah, I'm just reminded of the Rocky Top Inn murders.
Yeah.
Tattoo Eddie, I believe was his name. They found him hiding out in Maggie Valley too. I don't know why it is that criminals want to go to Maggie.
Well, it must be the beautiful scenery.
It must be. Perry Luttrell, a security supervisor at Ghost Town in the Sky theme park in Maggie Valley, received a phone call from employees who spotted a suspicious-looking man trespassing on park property. Maggie Valley Police Chief Sarah Lynn Carver was dispatched to the scene where she found James Tucker hiding under a bus. Now, Ghost Town in the Sky. We have to take a moment to talk about Ghost Town. I know we have listeners out there who are familiar with Ghost Town and know exactly what we're talking about. It was a Wild West theme park on top of Buck Mountain in Maggie Valley. Was open in the 60s and was open up until like the 90s, kind of closed, reopened for a minute, and closed again, and has since kind of been caught up in a bunch of real estate turmoil with people trying to purchase the property and deals falling through. And so the theme park has never been reopened.
Yeah, and there for, what would you say, a couple of decades, Western-themed, they were typically on the small side. Western-themed amusement parks were a big thing.
Well, I think it's because of the time period. I mean, it opened in the 60s. You had Bonanza and, like, cowboy movies and John Wayne, and, like, that was a big thing. I mean, I think a generation, maybe just a hair older than us, like maybe our parents' generation.
Right.
Because my dad's, like, obsessed with cowboy movies.
Yeah.
And that's all he watches are the same, like, 40 movies that he's seen since he was a child. So for 60-something years, he's watched the same movies over and over again. So I think for a lot of people of that generation, the Wild West, cowboys, like that was just something that really was like part of the zeitgeist, captured a lot of folks' attention.
Right.
And space, you know, kind of was another big one after that. But Ghost Town, it looked like a little small, you know, desert western town. It had a saloon, actually had 2 saloons. They had saloon dancer, can girls that performed different shows. They had live action like gunfighters that would get into these, you know, gunfights, like, and it had a whole storyline. You know, you had like the bad guys who robbed the bank, and then you had like the sheriff, and they'd have this big shootout in the streets while everybody, you know, stood around and watched. And then there was Digger, who was like the grave digger guy who'd come around
And get the
bodies and like put them in a wagon, you know. Well, my uncle, my great uncle, and my mom's stepdad were some of the original gunfighters there, and worked there for years and years as gunfighters. And so my uncle has some really interesting stories about his time.
Nice.
Well, yeah, because celebrities would come do like little stints, perform. They had music and stuff like that. So, like, my uncle met Burt Reynolds. A lot of the old cowboy actors would come, you know. So, it was a big thing. But to get to Ghost Town, you had to take a chairlift up the mountain.
Or
An incline railroad.
Right.
Car thing that went, and it was scary as hell.
It's
and
a very steep pitch.
incline.
Yes, a very steep incline.
Or you could drive up Rich Cove, which is my family's namesake. The Riches, they basically owned that mountain at one point. You drive up Rich Cove, up this little 2-lane road to the top of the mountain, and you could get in that way. And there were buses that would take you up. So I'm assuming somehow he was able to get up the mountain.
Or
And sneak in that way, probably.
so employees say he was actually walking around the park.
Well, he was hiding under the bus.
They saw him on top of the mountain,
Yeah.
not the parking lot down below.
No.
Okay,
So he'd probably, I'm going to guess, went up Rich Cove.
right.
Maybe on foot. I don't know. It's a hell of a climb. Can be done.
Maybe he snuck onto a shuttle bus or something.
But yeah, they find him up there, kind of near the bus entrance, top of the mountain, and he's just prowling around. And then here comes the police chief. So he crawls under the bus.
Hey, get out from under there. I'll see you.
So Maggie Valley Police Chief Sarah Lynn Carver, she's like, basically, what are you doing? Come out from under the bus. And that's when James Tucker pulls a gun on her, holding it to her head. It just so happens that a ghost town security guard named James Mathis was able to wrestle Tucker to the ground, and that's when he dropped the gun.
Well, see, what he didn't realize is country boys don't play. Country folks, they got some grit.
They do. And Sarah Lynn, I'm from that area. My family's from Maggie. I grew up in Maggie. She's like a beloved community member. She was a police officer for many years, became the chief. It was kind of awesome because, she was like the first female police chief in the area. Just really well liked. She went on to become, an alderman. I think maybe she ran for mayor. She's always been very, very involved in the community, and people really like her. So I imagine for, this security guard to see him pull a gun on this
Right.
police chief that everybody just loves her, he's probably like, not in my town.
Right.
Right?
Country folk don't wilt
They don't.
as soon as they see a gun.
So Perry Luttrell would say, quote, Tucker dropped the gun and was cuffed. Luttrell had worked at the theme park for 30 years as a chairlift operator and had worked his way up to park manager. And nothing like this had ever happened during his time at Ghost Town.
Well, no, here you have this multi-state fugitive who has committed many terrible crimes and was on a bit of a spree, if you will, crime spree. And yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Like, how the hell do you end up at a damn theme park? I'm sorry, but if I'm a fugitive and I'm on the run, the last thing I'm trying to do is get up the mountain so I can go get on the Sea Dragon or the Red Devil roller coaster.
Well, here's the thing. I think we must impress upon people is this a very small park. It's a...
Rufus is snoring. Did you hear that?
Yeah. It's like a little
Damn.
dragon.
Like, damn, dude.
It's very small. The community is very small. So it really is, unless you had direct ties to the area, family
Well,
or
especially at this time in the 90s. It was still
right.
a very close-knit community with people who'd been living there for generations.
So it's really a dumb place to go hide out, but let's be honest, this guy's not a Rhodes Scholar.
I'm just like, you're not that far from the Blue Ridge Parkway. It just seems like, you're right there at the state line.
Yeah.
You're 20 miles from the Tennessee state line. There are just probably a lot of other options besides going to the theme park.
You're 10 miles from Interstate 40, one of the major veins in our country.
That'll take you down into the gorge and into Tennessee.
Right.
So, what is this guy doing going to Ghost Town?
He's a dumbass.
It's such almost like a juvenile, I'm going to run away from home and go to Ghost Town.
Maybe somebody told him about Curly's Gold or something.
I ain't never been to Ghost Town. I'm going to get me some cotton candy and play some skee ball. Now, it didn't take long for James Tucker to confess to the crimes. He said financial pressures had motivated him to rob and kill the women. Tucker ended up writing a 48-page confession on July 11th, the day after he was apprehended.
So that $34 from 2 different murder victims really set his finances on the path to be in better shape.
Well, little do you know, he now has an IRA. Yeah, he's ready.
He invested that $34.
Yeah, he bought some bonds, some stocks.
Man, did you see? I'm sorry, you spoke of bonds. The other day I saw there's these unclaimed treasury bonds that total in the billions that have never been returned to either the recipients or the heirs of the recipients. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, how can I get my hands on some treasury bonds?
That just totally surprises me that the government's not tracking people down to give their money back.
And it's almost like they're keeping it quiet so we don't ask for our money.
What?
No way.
That's crazy.
I don't believe that. James also admitted to a robbery on June 14th in Frisco, South Carolina, where he admitted that he stole guns and other items that valued about $5,000. And they didn't even know about this robbery. They hadn't even connected him to this robbery. Now, during the confession, investigators noted the cool attitude Tucker displayed. It was chilling how discussing the crimes was just like any other day in his life. It was determined that Tucker's IQ was 129. He had a bright mind, but seemed to show no emotion or remorse, as if he had no conscience whatsoever. Charged with murder, robbery, and a slew of other crimes, James Tucker was taken to jail, then extradited to South Carolina. While in detention awaiting trial, Tucker was held under tight security. Director of the jail, Jerry Hyatt, said, quote, "I hope he doesn't escape, but you can never tell."
That's true, Jerry.
Due to security concerns, they ended up moving Tucker to the Broad River Correctional Center. While housed there, Tucker attempted suicide by hanging himself with a bedsheet in the prison cell. He was discovered by a guard and taken to the hospital. However, due to the fact that he was a serious escape threat, and they didn't know if the suicide attempt was a plot to escape once more,
right,
or if it was genuine, he was heavily guarded at the hospital, and they had to chain him to the bed. Which, I don't know why, but the thought of being chained to a hospital bed, restrained in a hospital bed, sounds fucking horrible. Because they're already the worst, most uncomfortable beds.
They really are.
And then they're going to chain you there? Not fun.
Well, that's because hospital experiences typically aren't very good.
They're not luxury. They're not luxurious.
They're not about comfort. They're just about, helping you, saving you from whatever ailment. And just, I think they want you to keep it moving. They want you to want
They don't
to
want
go.
me to be like, this is nice.
No, they don't want you to be like, man, this is a cool break from life. Can I get a couple of extra days here?
I really like this quality 2,000 thread count Egyptian cotton bedding you have here.
Yeah, and I like how it's really cold at night and I have limited covers.
And you come in and poke me every 10 minutes.
Which they have to.
Do they?
Yeah. And then you get the bill and it's like $27 million a night.
And it's like listed like 18 pokes. Charge you $18,000 for those 18 times we woke you up last night.
Yeah.
Well, Tucker was denied bond. Calhoun County Sheriff Dennis Jones told the press, quote, "He is definitely a lunatic." While incarcerated during November of 1992, James Tucker's wife delivered their son. But by then, she had already left him and would soon file for divorce. So he's losing everything.
Oh, yeah.
$34.
Really. His financial plan really worked out.
I mean, it's
callous and it's pretty terrifying.
hard to wrap your head around it.
Yeah, that someone would do all this and not really gain anything at all, even in the short term.
Just like a path of destruction.
Yeah.
Tucker's defense attempted to use his adverse childhood experiences as a reason for committing the crimes. According to his attorney, sex abuse perpetrated by his older brother had taught James that aggression was a way of getting things he wanted. They referenced a report by Dr. Floyd Bradshaw in 1970 that showed Tucker's admission that he had homosexual experiences with his brother Randy and Virgil Wayne. Yet a report in 1972 by Dr. James Marshall noted Tucker admitted most of the delinquent behavior, including these sexual behaviors, were to ensure he would be committed and not sent home. Like, as in he did not want to live with his stepfather.
Okay.
While some psychologists agreed that Tucker had likely been abused physically and maybe sexually, others pointed to the reports in which Tucker admitted that he engaged in these behaviors willingly, and he never once states, like, I was forced or coerced. They made me do this.
He just says he did it.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
he's
we did this stuff.
Right. Therefore, they felt it was kind of muddying the waters of sexual abuse. Because I guess the language he used wasn't like coming from someone who had been victimized.
Well, I mean, that makes sense.
So again, I think it's kind of it's murky.
Well, and I think I'm not saying that's not, I mean, that's some fairly taboo things that he was doing, and the incestuous nature, and back then even the same sex type of the relationship would be, like, oh my gosh, people were still pretty naive or conservative on that point. But I think that's a really fair point to make.
But I also think, and I'm not like condemning or condoning either way, because I don't know. I'm not like a child specialist or anything.
You're not?
But no, I'm not a specialist in anything.
I'm a specialist at not being a specialist.
Exactly. My specialty is not being special. Woo woo. Just having, my mom was a teacher, and having had friends who are teachers or have, degrees in early childhood development and that kind of stuff, I've heard that it's not completely uncommon for kids to masturbate even at like young ages, and that it's not really an indicator that they've been abused, but they're just curious about their body. And even though it's very taboo and strange, like maybe it's not so uncommon for siblings to be curious about each other. And I'm not saying that's okay or that it's normal or, because again, I don't know, but I've just heard other people discuss this as that it's not like super uncommon. Like I think it happens sometimes because kids are kids. But I guess when you take it to the extent of like, they're doing, I don't know, oral sex and stuff like that. I mean, that does seem a bit extreme, other than just like, hey, I'll show you mine if you show me yours, right?
Well, here's the thing about it.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a weird discussion to be having, but
when you use these types of things or events in a person's life to rationalize this monstrous behavior later, that just doesn't work for me.
Right.
Because many, many other people had maybe not the exact same, but similar experiences of some sort, or even worse, abusive, experiences growing up, and they just don't decide to treat someone like this. I mean, it really doesn't. That doesn't fly for me.
No, I get it. I'm not.
And I know all the numbers about, sometimes the
justifying anything.
abuser.
I'm just saying, I think maybe it's people don't talk about it, but maybe it's not as far out there as
right
we might think it is.
Yeah, and I know the abused can become the abuser and blah, that's and that. I get all that. And I understand that people are different and they react differently to, the same situations. But, yeah, it just doesn't. This kind of callous, cold-blooded murder for nothing is just, there's no excuse for that. There really isn't. I mean, even you take somebody like Carl Panzram, who literally was like a living hell growing up in these, very old school.
Charles Manson.
Horrible boy schools and all this, juvenile halls is just sadistic, fucking, black holes. And you understand why he became,
a monster.
But it still doesn't make it okay. It's not, it doesn't be like, okay, well, we'll let you go because you were treated horribly too,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, come on.
James Tucker was diagnosed with developing an antisocial personality disorder, which was exacerbated. I can never say that word right.
Exacerbation.
Again, I'm very special at not being special. By entering the correctional system at 13, he was incarcerated into an adult prison at 16 and had few role models as a child. So instead, Tucker looked up to the criminals who were in prison alongside him. Yet Dr. Richard Frierson testified that an antisocial disorder does not affect a person's ability to choose his or her behavior. The antisocial personality disorder is a description of behaviors, but is not the reason you have those behaviors. Ballistics showed the gun used to kill Dolly and murder Shannon matched a .25 caliber handgun that was found in Tucker's possession at the time of arrest. Yet prosecutors argued at trial that the confession was obtained under duress and the state had no substantive evidence against Tucker, particularly in the murder of Shannon Mellon.
Besides the murder weapon?
Or that car that he had stolen and abandoned in Spartanburg.
Yeah.
Near where he was staying.
Right.
Yeah. James Neal Tucker was found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. Yet, even on death row, James Tucker was defiant. So in South Carolina, an inmate at that time could choose between the electric chair, which, by the way, was built in 1912.
Nice.
I'm not sure I want to sit in this old-ass chair.
Well, I mean, if you're going to go out, I guess you should go out with a bang.
Here's
right?
a chair that's like 80 years old. No thanks. Or lethal injection. But he refused to choose a method.
They really left it up to them, up to the prisoner?
Yes.
And if you don't choose?
Well, at this time, yes. I think they moved to do, the
Right.
lethal injection. But recently they brought back the firing squad option.
Well, yeah, and that's obviously because of the scarcity of the medicines used in the lethal injection, the chemicals used for the lethal injection.
Well, after he was sentenced, James said, quote, "The way I was raised, I felt I was a bad person. Nothing that happened to me justified what I did." Damn Skippy.
I think he deserved death. I think what he did, he should. I mean, and just his refusal to follow the rules, or
Just can't do it.
he refuses to. He's not gonna in any form or fashion.
Nope. On May 28th of 2004, James Tucker was executed by electric chair. His attorney read a statement left by Tucker. I'm going to read this to you, Dylan. "To everyone, I have thought of a million things to say, but they can all be summed up like this. To those I have harmed, my abject apologies and regrets. I am ashamed. To those who must remain and deal with this insane world, my condolences. But be of good cheer. Christ has overcome the world. I know that my Redeemer lives. I am leaving this world with a cheerful attitude. Hallelujah."
Oh, wow.
Jay Jackson, an attorney who defended him in the Calhoun County case, said, quote, "Everything was about him and his needs. And if his needs were averse to yours, then tough. He just had no sympathy for how his behavior would affect you." At the time, many advocates spoke out about how it had taken the state 14 years to execute James Tucker, which was 2/3 of the life victim Shannon Mellon had lived, because she was only 21. James Oakley remarried a woman named Patsy, who had actually known Dolly casually. Like, she would always stop and compliment her roses and her flowers. Patsy, and Dolly, like I said, had spoken about her roses, and it was after Dolly's murder that Patsy had sent an unsigned card to James Oakley, who, for some reason, just kept it in his possession. This card, it touched him in some way. Eventually, the pair met formally, and they ended up marrying.
Oh.
They moved to Maggie Valley, of all places.
Wow.
Where Tucker had been found. Patsy and James kept Dolly's memory alive, even making Patsy's engagement ring from a stone that had been in one of Dolly's favorite rings. Patsy asked James if Dolly wore Chanel No. 5 perfume one day out of the blue, and he answered yes. I'll be a little confused by the question, like, yeah, why are you asking me that? Patsy had started smelling Chanel No. 5 around their house. Both agreed that Dolly was with them from that moment on.
Oh, wow. That's kind of sweet.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And she also, I was reading in a newspaper article where she had told a story of moving into this new house in Maggie, and they were trying to incorporate like some of Dolly's possessions and favorite things in the house, to keep her memory alive. And Patsy had recalled Dolly's beautiful roses, and she said she had built kind of a, like a little raised garden bed, and went and got some roses and just sort of like, threw the seeds and whatever in there, not really thinking it's going to grow. And then all of a sudden, she said it just took off like crazy. All these beautiful flowers and some roses popped up, and that she knew that it was for Dolly, that Dolly was with them.
That's sweet.
And I thought that was really sweet. And I think it's nice that, James found a partner who was so willing to honor his first wife and really keep her memory as alive, and also part of their marriage. It's just a really nice gesture.
Her having been ripped from him in that horrible way, I mean, I totally understand. And I would have, if I met someone that had something like that happen to, I'd have no problem keeping pictures or things, or them be able to talk about the one they lost. Because, I mean, I think that's the only way you should approach that.
Yeah, and it sounds like James and Dolly really did have a wonderful marriage. They were truly, like, just best friends. So really sad to think how she was just ripped away from him. It's so senseless.
Yeah.
And then you have poor Shannon, this young 21-year-old, just starting life, you know, big dreams. She's working at this horse farm. She's training horses. She wants to be a jockey. It's just like doing her thing. And this maniac takes her out.
Yeah.
For $20.
Jesus.
Just ridiculous.
And yeah, and I agree. The worst part
Senseless.
of his sentence was the fact he lived all those years on death row. He didn't deserve to. I'm sorry. I don't think he did. He should have been.
I agree.
You know, when I was younger, they were doing executions all the time. I mean, you heard about it quite often.
Well, you know, they have recently announced, I won't go too far off the deep end here talking about it, but that I guess President Biden pardoned some folks who were on death row, right? And one of the pardons was for Richard Allen Jackson in Asheville, who murdered Karen Stiles, which was the very first case.
What? He
we
pardoned that son of a
covered.
bitch?
The guy who killed Karen Stiles was in Bent Creek Forest. She was jogging. He attacked her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, now he just like let him come off of death row? Is that
Yes.
what that means?
Yeah. He's been pardoned from death row.
I can't
But,
believe that.
I mean, he will still serve a life sentence.
Yeah, but I can't believe that piece of shit's still alive, dude. What he did to that poor woman.
So, yeah, he killed her in 1994, raped and killed her, and he is among 37 death row inmates with sentences commuted by President Biden. So he was convicted of kidnapping and murdering Karen Stiles and given the death penalty. If you guys recall, if you listened to our very first podcast many, many years ago, as I mentioned, she was running in the Bent Creek area, which is part of Pisgah National Forest. This was on Halloween morning of 1994, and her body was found 25 days later, duct taped to a tree. She had been sexually assaulted and shot in the head.
Yeah.
Now, he was convicted in 2001, and he was, I guess, had appealed. His sentence was upheld again in 2022. But then as of Monday, December 23rd, he became one of 37 federal death row inmates who will now serve life without parole because of this commutation.
Look.
Commutation.
His sentence having been commuted.
You know what I'm saying.
Well, and look, and by all outgoing presidents typically do something to this effect. So, I mean, we're not going to dig into the...
Well, no, I just...
is Biden wrong? I mean, I don't know. They all do it.
Well, when I read that, I mean, I was like, obviously, that's a big update to a case we covered. And just it being a local story, I mean, remembering when this happened and, in some ways, I mean, I get the president has a right to pardon, individuals. But at the same time, I think, but is that really justice served? Because you had a jury. This guy had a fair trial. He had a jury of his peers. This is the sentence they handed down.
Yeah.
It went through the appeal process. They upheld his sentence. And then you're just going to come in and be like, oh, sorry, nope.
Well, look.
I mean, I don't know.
There's the problem. 30 years later, after he killed that poor woman in that horrific fashion, tortured her, abused her before he killed her.
Left her tied to a tree.
Like an animal.
Yeah.
The fact that
I just feel for her family.
Yeah, but
her loved ones.
The fact that he's even alive to be exonerated from death row, his death penalty or his death sentence, that's the problem. I mean, come on, 30 years later.
I've teetered. I mean, over the years, there was a point in my life where I was, I guess, against the death penalty and felt like this is cruel and we don't really have the right to decide who lives and dies. And I guess as I've gotten older, they always say you maybe change your point of view as you get older. You might get a little more conservative on some things or whatever. And I guess with the death penalty, I kind of teeter back and forth because there are definitely some cases where, you know, the evidence seems murky or not very clear or very circumstantial and eyewitness accounts, you know, and I think, oh, well, I don't know about this. But then there are other cases where the evidence is pretty concrete.
When you get into
and you get into the, like, you know, the details and like what he did to this poor woman is fucking awful. And now we're just going to let him live, even though it went through the justice system and there was a decision made. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know if I agree with it.
Well, and I think we're not killing enough people.
Okay.
No, I mean, but what you're saying is, and that's a big part of the anti-death penalty crowd's argument, and it has merit, is the fact that an innocent person can be sentenced to death and then put to death by the state, and that's a terrible thing. But I think that it'd be very easy to categorize these things, especially with modern day forensics and the DNAs and all this stuff. That
if you have conclusive evidence this person is the perpetrator, they committed this crime, and it's a heinous crime, and, you know, it warrants the death penalty, the jury has decided, the judge hands down the sentence, then it should just stand, right? I mean,
it should be carried out.
I don't know. That's what I think.
I mean, it should be, you know, reviewed, whatever. Let's make sure all our T's are crossed and our I's dotted, and it should be carried out. I'm sorry. I don't understand why we're not sentencing these school shooters and shit to death. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're fucking 14 or 15-year-olds or not. You walked into school and randomly shot people in the fucking face, dude. You know how horrific and bad that is? I don't. And there, it's not even a question of whether you did it or not.
I know how bad it is.
Yeah, look, it's not even a question of whether you did. Everybody knows you did it. They literally caught you on scene in body armor and fucking with the gun, okay? And there's like camera footage of you everywhere in the building shooting people. I mean, come on.
I know, and, you know, it's... I guess we grew up in a time, we were pretty lucky, I think, to have grown up in the 80s and 90s. There was so much in the world we didn't deal with. I mean, we didn't have social media. We didn't have phones. We didn't have that element of our lives captured. And,
right.
You know.
It's a good thing.
And no, it definitely is a good thing. And we didn't deal with mass shooters like this, like these, like kids today. And it just breaks my heart for them. But I have to say, you know, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but it, like, somehow, I guess this, like, little wormhole lives in the back of my brain that anytime I'm in a public place, intrusive thought that something like that could happen at any moment.
Oh, right.
And just last night, Christmas Eve night. I guess it's actually the eve of Christmas. I don't know. We're at the movies. And halfway through the picture show, Dylan, I started having this bizarre thought or like intrusive thought about what if somebody because there were no exits in this theater.
No, it's like one way in. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, which kind of freaked me out anyway because I'm like, oh, this is kind of a fire hazard. There's no exit. But then I started thinking, what if someone came in here and just started like firing away?
Which has happened before.
I know. Like, where would we go? What would happen? You know. And then I had to start, like, kind of secretly smacking my hand, like, stop thinking about that. But, you know, just growing up, it was like you never had to think about things like that.
No, I think that you wanted somebody to come in there and shoot the place up so you could leave Nosferatu early.
Not a funny joke, Dylan.
Oh, well, it was a kind of funny joke.
That's an inappropriate joke.
Okay, that's a better descriptor of it.
I'm offended by your joke. I don't think it's funny.
Can we say, so we went on Christmas Day.
Christmas Day evening, night, Christmas Day night, eve, the eve of Christmas. I don't know.
Look, it's just Christmas Day, dude. Damn.
Christmas night.
They should have never let us get that movie pass at Regal because we've been burning that shit up. Like we've been taking it to Hollywood.
I don't have anything else to do.
So we've seen quite a few lately. So we wanted to go see Nosferatu on the eve of its dropping.
I have been waiting for this film, anticipating it, and I don't. Typically, I mean, there's very few films that I'm like, I can't wait to see it, right? I was so excited about this.
Look, it had its moments. I think there was. Look, you're the movie file, and you're the film student and all that stuff. It did have moments. There were scenes and shots, I think, bridged the gap between the original source material.
Honey, you can like whatever you want.
And the modern take of it in a very good way.
We don't have to like the same things.
They had the muted tones. They weren't actually filming in black and white, but it had a feel like they were just through the costumes and the whatever. You know, right?
Okay.
And so I thought it had brief glimpses. Brief. But here's the thing I don't understand. Why is every movie too long nowadays?
I don't know, because I kind of couldn't wait for it to be over.
I've had that feeling more than once in the recent months, because this is the most I've been to the movies in years. So recently, as we've been burning up our Regal Movie Pass.
They're not even sponsoring the show. We should quit saying Regal Movie Pass.
Now, I want everybody to get it and make them son of a bitches pay. But don't buy the overpriced concessions at the theater either. You got to go to the dollar store. Okay, I'm going to put you on some game. You go to the dollar store and you go get you a box of movie candy for a couple bucks. Everybody gets to pick out their favorite one.
Go to the Walgreens and get that box movie candy. Yeah,
and you
like
smuggle it in.
Yep.
Right?
You ain't overcharging me for no Raisinets.
Heather brings her own water and everything.
Got my own Twizzlers. I know. It's like, put it in Mama's big purse.
Dude, like a small popcorn's like $10. I mean, we always paid more. We always knew it cost a little bit. But they've just lost their damn minds on these prices. It'll be like $8 or $9 or $10 for a drink that they have a nickel
For like
in.
$12 for some stale tortilla chips.
And nachos.
And that cheese goop.
Gosh.
Sauce. I don't even know what it is. And then they're like, here's $12 nachos. And you're like, I could get better, more fresh chips and cheese at the 7-Eleven.
But it's like every movie's a director's cut nowadays. It's
That's true.
You could easily trim 30 minutes plus out of every movie and it'd be better. Not only as, at the same, but it'd be better. And I don't know. I've had that feeling like I wish this movie, maybe it's just I'm just too old or something. I don't understand it. But sometimes, hey, we went and saw that It's Saturday Night movie. Nice little surprise.
Saturday night, yeah.
And I wasn't feeling that way. Maybe it was just a good movie,
Well, it was refreshing. It was a good film.
Gosh, the movies are just too long. Everything's like 2 hours plus. I was like, what? Remember back in the day when you're like, oh my God, is that the end? You were surprised. You didn't want it to
You had like
end.
an 80-minute runtime?
Yeah, hour 20.
90 minutes.
Hour 45 was a long movie.
I mean,
back
now
in the
when I
days.
see movies like 2+ hours, that like deters me from wanting to see it.
Yeah, whatever happened to that good hour and a half or less?
Just entertain me for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then send me on my way.
If my legs...
Because by an hour and a half, my butt's going numb.
Yeah. Yeah, if my lower
because
body...
this theater hasn't updated its seats in like 30 years, since the 90s.
If I can't feel my legs when I get up, I've been sitting there too long.
And it's hot. It's always so hot. And I guess they're cheap, so they don't want to turn the AC on. So it has to get to a certain temperature before the AC kicks on, which is at the end of the movie. So that I'm sitting in this crowded-ass theater, sweating my balls off next to some stranger that I don't know who's hogging the armrest and eating like 15 different snacks. Like he's crunching nachos in my ear, and then he's eating popcorn, and he's like slurping on a hot dog. And I'm just like, bro, what do you do? He spent probably $80 on food at this movie. And it's just making all this crunchy noise in my ear and sort of like taking over my space. He keeps elbowing me.
Dude, why you
I was just like, oh my God. And then I'm burning up, like sweating, and I'm trying to take my hoodie off, but it's like I don't have any room because I'm so crowded.
I saw you struggling.
Struggling to take my hoodie off, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm melting.
Remember back in the day, the theaters were always cold.
Man, we're still recording. We're just going on and on about this.
You had to take a hoodie or a light
People are
jacket
bored now.
in summertime because it would be freezing in the theater. And I thought that was a good thing. It's all cozy. You can just, enjoy your time.
Yeah.
God.
Ice cold.
And you always get seated next to people doing way too much.
Why? It's like I'm a magnet for the most obnoxious, no self-awareness type of people. They're going to get all up in my grill.
Yeah.
And I can move away from them, and then they're going to come sit next to me anyway.
They'll follow you.
Does it not happen all the time? I'm like, why is this happening to me? If the Lord is trying to teach me patience, it ain't working.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, one last thing, and let's
Swim
leave.
away.
I just saw that I think his name is Luciano. Is that the guy's name that shot
I
that?
thought it was Luigi.
Luigi Marciano. What is it?
I think it's Magion. No.
The guy who
Magione.
shot the United Healthcare
It's a Luigi.
CEO. Gosh, I don't even know his name.
Brian Thompson.
Brian Thompson. Poor guy.
You were terrible at reporting news,
Yeah,
by
I
the
know.
way.
I know. Anyway, they have charged him. And sorry, Brian Thompson was the victim. And I honestly don't think he should have been gunned down in the street like an animal. I think that was wrong, even though I don't agree with what the healthcare. That conversation's so weird. Like people championing that. I think that's very strange. Just another thing the internet does that surprises me. They have charged his murderer with domestic terrorism, which I find very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Definitely interesting.
he assassinated this person. He was obviously lying in wait to kill him directly. But people were pointing out they've never once charged these spree killers, these spree shooters, school shooters, any of these people with domestic terrorism, which that, in my mind, is a much more terroristic act, if you will, towards a large group of people, just people running, screaming, all that. And why do you think that is, Heather? Do you have an opinion
No.
on this news that I just told you in a very poor fashion?
Well, it's different. I don't know if this moving forward, if this happens and he's convicted, will this set a precedent? Is it just related to laws in New York? I mean, I guess I need more information about how this is going down.
No, you got to have a very strong opinion, just like you're on the internet, and now all of a sudden you're an expert on domestic terrorism.
All caps. Dislike.
Yes.
Thanks, Obama.
In a nutshell,
I don't know. What are some other things people comment?
I have no, I don't have much information either. I just saw this not long before we recorded. But I think it is possibly a case of the powers that be don't like to be hunted down and killed, for one. And what they really don't like, which I find disturbing partially too, is the public's reaction to this man's murder. Right? I mean, very seldom do we get on there and champion murder. And that's literally what's happened.
It's very strange to me how people are fetishizing this guy like he's some hot sex beast. And I'm like, bro, he's like, I'm sorry, but being like, oh, he's hot. I'm like, that's no different than lusting over Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, really, it's weird.
he's a murderer. It's very strange.
He's
to
a
me
cold-blooded
to,
murderer.
like, get hot by that or like find this person hot.
No matter what the motivations, or if you agree with any of it, he's a cold-blooded murderer. He gunned that man down in cold blood.
Allegedly.
I don't think I'm not going to say allegedly
Look,
because I've seen the video.
well, I'm not trying to get sued, but if anybody
okay.
tries to sue Dylan, because I
Look.
said allegedly.
Allegedly, I saw him kill him on video. So anyway, I found that very interesting. I think the powers that be are skirt.
Okay, Dylan, enough.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It's like a case and conversation.
Yes, and thanks again.
Join us for true crime and conversations that are off topic but kind of relevant.
Dude, that's a great description.
Mountain murders.
And thanks again to Carol and Straw Baby for sponsoring today's show.
Hell yeah.
You can do just like them and go over to Patreon/Mountain Murders, patreon.com/Mountain Murders podcast, and get all kinds of extra content. There is a literal ton, a shit ton of it over there. Because guess what? Mountain Murders is in a couple of days going to turn 6 years old.
Dang.
That's a lot.
In my best Hulk Hogan voice, I'm like, hell yeah, brother.
And we do appreciate their direct support. And all the other patrons, we love you. And all the listeners, you rock. That's all I got.
He's all out of deep thoughts, y'all. Until next time.
All righty.
Ciao, Dylan.
Bye.